Hi, everyone. We are excited to chat today about the Exploring Food Futures. Let me quick do a slideshow here. So just to preface this, when we tune into podcasts, webinars about the future of food, a lot of times it's the same topics. It's plant-based proteins, lab-grown meats, vertical farming, local food chains. And while that's all relevant to the work that we do at Relish, we are specifically focused on the future of food service. So really those things are kind of just one component of the future of food that we're thinking about. When we say food service, we think about restaurants, diners, and the food supply chain. So Relish Works is the innovation hub for a large national and North American broadline food distributor, Gordon Food Service. And their business is to deliver food from food suppliers, think General Mills, Tyson's Chicken, to food service providers like restaurants, hospitals, and schools. And our work at Relish as the innovation hub is really to discover and create new solutions for their customers and also to grow and diversify our business. So when I joined Relish 5 years ago,
okay, that sounds good.
As a human-centered designer, Kylie, I think you're still off mute. You might want to get back on mute. So 5 years ago, when I joined Relish as a human-centered designer, I would have told you that desirability or what people want is really what drives innovation. And I've since learned that that is not always true, or at least not that simple. So the three things that we look at Relish in terms of what's driving the future really fall into these three buckets. What people want as one of them, what's possible, what's technologically possible, and what's happening to us, or what we call externalities. And we look at the trends in each three of these categories that are really the fastest growing and most pervasive. So we're excited to talk about two case studies today that are, projects that we've taken on to explore the future of food. And this first one is an exploratory effort looking at fulfillment in cities in the future. It touches on speed and convenience, transparency, automation, data, and urbanization. We do efforts like this to paint an inspiring, but also a concrete vision of the future. And it helps us to identify the steps that we as an organization and also an industry can take to get to that future. The second case study that we're going to share with you today is a venture that we're piloting that addresses themes in convenience, dietary complexity, data and personalized medicine, and changing demographics, specifically aging. We pursue the design and development of new concepts like this to meet our customers' needs and also to create new value for our business. Some of the ideas we pursue never make it out of a deck. Some of them we get to pilot like this, and some of them are early stage startups like the one Stephanie is running that are still trying to find the right product market fit. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mara.
Hi, everyone. So as Kate mentioned, I'm here to share our Future of Fulfillment project, which is a futures project we did back in 2019 that built off of research from futurists, architects, scholars. They were doing a lot of work at the time around futures of cities and future of work. And we realized this type of future project hadn't ever really been done in regards to food distribution specifically in our industry. So we thought, let's imagine what the future of cities could mean for a company like our parent company, Gordon Food Service. Our project, the next slide, hinged on the statistic that the World Economic Forum put out in an article that expected 80% of all food to be consumed. It really surprised us. And our current food system is It's built around efficiency and honestly around a more suburban approach to fulfillment. And so we saw this number and we're like, okay, this is really, really important for us to tackle, to imagine how things could change in the future and start to work towards that future. So while this project covered a lot of ground, today I'm going to highlight just a couple takeaways that summarize how this food system needs to shift to accommodate some of these major driving forces, some of which Kate mentions, like urbanization, automation, data, and climate change. So our current food system is defined by its linearity and scale. And so our thesis for this project was that we believe the future food system will transform to be more responsive, more local, and a closed loop ecosystem. So that first part, changing from a linear food system to a more circular one. Today, the system is a one-way route. It goes from farm to distributor to plate to landfill, without taking advantage of any excess food or resource wastes that might have been produced along the way. Tomorrow, we're hoping we can define the food system by its ability to reuse excess food, energy, or other resources and completely eliminate any waste from the system. So circular solutions could look like a shift away from fossil fuels, which we're currently using today to transport the food from farms to distribution centers. It could look like more creative last mile solutions like bikes and robots that bring the food from distribution centers to restaurants. Or when you start to think about waste, restaurants right now are pretty good at reducing their waste through their cooking and menu planning, but there can sometimes be excess food or compost, and there's definitely excess packaging. So if we shift to a more reusable packaging system, how can that close that loop of the food system, and how can GFS use their nimble logistics capabilities to help enable that? So the other key shift that I mentioned is from a perspective of efficiency as a centralized all-at-once mentality to a more distributed and decentralized network. So that again applies first to food sources. So we are looking forward to a future in which the majority of food can be sourced more locally and more sustainably, which would eliminate reliance on one or two really big farms that might exist across the country. The food has to move a really long distance to get to its end state. Let's say we rely on a system like that now for lettuce, and there's a listeria outbreak. That's something that I've heard about a lot in the past couple of years. There's no flexibility in the system for distributors to act nimbly to fulfill what would be a now rising demand for lettuce because no one can get it. If cities source their food from a variety of smaller urban farms, maybe hydroponic farms, those are really flexible. You could put them in small spaces like unused parking garages in the city. This process of procurement becomes future-proofed, so there's plenty of room to adjust if there's an emergency. This distributed mindset applies to distribution as well. So currently, food is transported in really large quantities across, like I said, really far distances from the source to a huge warehouse to the end consumer. And for this reason, the system it's pretty efficient. It's modeled around less frequent, large scale deliveries on semi-trucks. And so that makes the distribution centers themselves really large and have to carry a lot of food at any given time. But when you start to think of a climate event, for example, that becomes a problem. Or if you think about urbanization, a lot of people moving to a city and rising real estate costs, restaurants in cities tend to have really small floor plans. And so they don't have a lot of room to store a huge drop of food all at once, or it'll start to go bad because it's just sitting in the back room. So they'd prefer smaller deliveries at a more frequent cadence. And so if we switch to a more decentralized network for local food delivered with more frequent deliveries, that would enable the food to be fresher and reach more people.